I can't seem to focus, and you don't seem to notice I'm not here. I'm just a mirror. You check your complexion to find your reflections all alone. I had to go. Can't you hear me? I'm not coming home. Do you understand? I've changed my plans, 'cause I'm in love with my future. Can't wait to meet her, and I'm in love, but not with anybody else. Just wanna get to know myself. I know supposedly I'm lonely now. No, I'm supposed to be unhappy without someone, but aren't I someone? To be your answer, 'cause you're so handsome. But I know better than to drive you home, 'cause you'd invite me in, and I'd be yours again. But I'm in love with my future, and you don't know her, and I'm in love, but not with anybody here. I see you in a couple years.
Good morning. Welcome to the first ever virtual Women's Leadership Conference. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Lee Ritz from Ravenwood High School, for that incredible music. We have our conference broken up into two sections this morning. The first, you're going to hear from three powerful women. And then the second, we're going to break you into Zoom rooms where you'll be able to discuss the topics that were shared, and then also hopefully make some new connections. Before we get started, I do want to take just a few moments to thank our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor, Vanderbilt Health, along with our supporting sponsors, AP Live, Crew Nashville, Franklin Synergy Bank, and of course, Tractor Supply. At this point, we want to take just a few moments to hear from our presenting sponsor, Vanderbilt Health.
Every day we go to work with a simple purpose at Vanderbilt Health: to wipe away fear, to clear minds of lingering doubt, and to care for Middle Tennessee. To help you move forward with life with the screenings, treatments, and procedures that support your health. Because we know there are far more health challenges that confront us than one virus. Staying safe is essential, so is your health. Learn more about both at vanderbilthealth.com.
Hello, I am Sohail Asad Sangavi, a Vanderbilt OBGYN healthcare provider. Here at Vanderbilt, we care for women throughout their lifespan, from annual GYN exam to pregnancy, delivery, and postmenopause, and many other conditions, including cancer and infertility. Our team are available in more than 19 locations in Tennessee, and I am so pleased to mention that we have 3 different locations in Williamson County, in Brentwood, Franklin, and Cool Springs. We encourage you to take your health serious. Your health is the keystone foundation that could impact all other aspects of your life. We also understand that your safety is essential, so is your health. And for that reason, Vanderbilt has taken every precaution to prevent infection and protect our patients. You may visit our Vanderbilt COVID-19 website for more details on our strategies. And finally, our patients at Vanderbilt always come first. You always have, you always will. Thank you.
Thank you again to Vanderbilt Health and all of today's sponsors for their generous support. Our first speaker today is Sharon Robertson. Sharon is the president and CEO of YWCA. She's also the winner of the Academy for Women of Achievement Award. The YWCA is servicing Nashville and Middle Tennessee women, girls, and families through programming to eliminate racism and empower women. Sharon joined the 119-year-old organization after working as senior vice president and general counsel and secretary for Direct General Corporation. Welcome, Sharon.
Hello, thank you very much, and good morning. I can say I'm happy to be here. As you all know, these are difficult times for most of us. But today we're going to have what I call a chat. The reason I call it a chat as opposed to a lesson or something to that effect is I really am going to tell you things from my heart, things that I think are important. However, you're going to have to digest what I tell you to make it fit you, because everything you will do will be about your authentic self. The theme of this chat is resilience. And I think of resilience as your muscle memory. For those of you who may or may not understand how muscles work, you really have to exercise and break down muscles to build them back. So resilience is much the same thing. You're going to have to break yourself down somewhat in order to move forward. When I decided to do this chat, I thought it was important to go what I call old school. Now, for old school some, that may mean hip hop, or that may mean going back to the 60s and 70s. But I'm going back old school BC, Aristotle. And I figured at a minimum, he could not sue me if I get what he said wrong. I really truly believe that the tried and true virtues or morality of our society will serve you well, especially through very difficult times. If you are going to be successful, looking at the 12 virtues of the philosopher Aristotle and kind of putting my own twist on them will serve you well. Now, a little bit about your ground rules. You may say, you're giving me these 12 virtues that you think are so important for leadership, but I know leaders that don't have these things. I want you to look at leadership very broadly. Leadership is just not there in that chair. Because a lot of people sit in that leadership chair that I will tell you are not true leaders. A lot of people sit in that leadership chair that have gotten there that do not have these virtues are not successful. I also want you to keep in mind that success will have nothing to do with how much money you make. It will have absolutely nothing to do with that. That is really just an outward view of success, but not something that you should internalize. I also want you to look at success very broadly, especially for women. Success not only has to be, I got this job, I have this money, I have this car and house. Success must be that you are happy in all aspects of your life. Are you successful in your family? Are you successful with your friends? All those other aspects of your life. Because your leadership in your family, your leadership in your friendship groups, you're a leader at work. So leadership is not only having to do with a job. That's a very narrow view of leadership. So what I'm going to talk about today is that broader, more expansive view of leadership. Courage. This is the first virtue that Aristotle talks about. And no matter how you see these variations of what he said, courage is always a part of that. I will say that of all the virtues or moral standards or leadership quality, even the worst of leaders will have a level of, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to make this work. And courage is very difficult, but courage is something you can learn. Courage is something where when things are going wrong, everyone can have courage when things are going well. We can do everything. Yeah, we're selling the hell out of this product. We're doing everything well. But when things get difficult, when you have a virus that has shut your business down and you have to go before the people that you love and have worked side by side to build the business and say, I'm going to have to close this down. But I will commit to you when things are different, we will come back. That is courage. And every leader has to have that, and they have to have that deep inside themselves. Temperance. Temperance has been used throughout history, the temperance movement, you can't drink, you can't do this, but it's really about moderation in your life. People who are out of control, they don't do things in a moderate fashion. They don't really take the time to think about their actions, will eventually not make good leaders. The impulsive qualities that many people display are really not going to serve you well. And this is why I go back to that broader view of what is leadership and what is resilience. If you do not have enough left over because you've been leading a lifestyle that you do not have any moderation, when things go wrong, when you need to have that muscle of leadership, there will be nothing left because you use it up on things that are unimportant. Liberality. I love this one because it's really a play on having a liberal mindset. I always say that you should be a lifelong learner. The reason for this is the more that you read, the more that you understand, the more you look at this is bigger than yourself, the more you will understand and broaden your mind. The best leaders are free thinkers. They don't think about, oh, this is a terrible situation we're in, you know, how are we going to overcome this? How can I keep my business going? They look down the road because they're thinking very broadly. They're very liberal thinkers. They're thinking a very bigger picture. And those that can think of the bigger picture are really those that are exercising that leadership muscle. Magnificence. You know I got this from Aristotle. No one uses this word. No one uses this word in modern life, but it's a beautiful, wonderful word. The reason for this is some people seem to think people have what's called the it factor. They have some sort of aura that people follow them. But if you look at the totality of most people's lives, they don't come out of the womb and say, I'm wonderful, follow me, I have that it factor. They work on themselves. They work on understanding the room. They work on understanding who's around them and what other people are doing. They really have worked, and some people, I will say it comes more natural than others, but they really work on making them the kind of person that others want to follow. Transcendence. And this is really a key part for me. I've always been a person that loved yoga. I've always been a person that loved to meditate. Do what you need to do to build that spiritual muscle. Because I will tell you, those who think beyond what's right in front of them in the world as we see it are going to be the people that will be successful leaders, because there will be times when you are in that leadership chair and you will have the weight of the world on you, and you're going to need some place to put that. And you can't put it on anyone else but something much higher than yourself. And I'm not talking about traditional religion, although that works for some. I'm talking about the real spiritual fiber that everyone that really takes the time to think, go outside, look at nature, that takes the time to think, that's what I'm talking about. And that's what good leaders have to have. All right, proper ambition. Now notice it says proper ambition. Not just I'm out here, I'm gonna make it no matter what, I'm gonna run everyone. Everyone knows the story of those who said they fought their way to the top and took a lot, took names, called names, pushed people down. Go back to that broader definition of leadership. How happy are those people in the leadership of their friends, their peers, etc.? Do people truly respect them? Are they the kind of person that you would go to their funeral even though the weather is bad? Are those the kind of people you want to be? No. Proper ambition, you have to have a level of drive to be a leader, but it should not be one that forsakes your humanity. And that's what you have to always make sure. Never sacrifice that, because if you do, then the other aspects of your life will be a failure. Patience. And I will say, of all of these virtues, I say Aristotle knew me before I was even thought of. Patience is difficult. And the older you get and the more you go through, the more impatient you will be, but it is so important. The reason for that is no matter where you are in your career, it's always good to step back and say, just because I think this is the best way of doing something, others have ideas. And the best ideas you will have is when you give the opportunity of someone else that's very different from you to explain something to you. Take that level of patience. People will try your patience. You'll have the busiest day in the world and someone says, I want to talk to you. And as a true leader, if it's really something you have to get done, you set your time and say, I'm going to get back to you. When can we meet? I'm doing this right now. But if it's anything less than an urgent matter, and some employee or some person comes to you, whether that's your children, your spouse, your partner, or whatever, sit down with that person and say, okay, let's have this conversation. Because leadership is about having the patience and understanding there are a lot of viewpoints that you need to listen to, and you need to have that level of calm. Take your deep breaths. Make sure that you treat that person as you would want to be treated, and have that level of patience. Okay, friendliness. Now this comes easier for some people and harder for others. And I will say that in order to be a leader, I think that you really have to care. And to me, friendliness is about caring. I grew up with a mother that was part politician, an educator, you name it, she did it. And she always used to tell us when we were very young that you can always speak to someone. It's very easy to say, good day, how are you? Because friendliness counts, and you never know. Someone could be having the worst day of their lives, but you just say, I hope that you have a good day. just to speak to people. It's old school. Just be friendly. And it seems so obvious, but I know a lot of leaders who are very good people once you get to know them, but they'll walk around the hallways at a business and never speak to the employees. When I was general counsel of really 2 different companies, I would walk sometimes around in areas that were not my area, just say, what's going on? Hey, you know, just to speak. And so people would know, 1, you're approachable, but 1, you cared about their feelings. Truthfulness. Now, this is a dicey one for a lot of people because people think, well, leaders lie all the time, but don't confuse politics with leadership. Those are 2 different things. And I also told you, you have to look at how people really are truly leaders. Do people respect them, which is really a key to leadership? Do people believe them? Truthfulness is fundamental. And I've never seen someone who was a true leader if they did not tell the truth. You really have to be truthful in your life. And that's sometimes difficult because especially in corporate America, you can twist your mind to thinking, well, that makes sense, and it won't be true. But if you have developed that spiritual muscle, if you have developed that really sense of yourself muscle, if you've really built that resilience to know that even though I tell you what you're telling is not the truth, I will survive. And sometimes you have to put yourself out there as a leader. There are leaders, when they find out terrible things are going on in their company, they say, we're going to have to stop this now. And that is leadership. So this is difficult sometimes because you can trick yourself and you can say, well, I didn't tell the lie, but I let it go on. And see, that's some of the conversations we're having now in our society. You're just really as guilty if you let something that is not right go forward as you are if you did it yourself. And people need to go about their life, especially their leadership role, with that in mind. Wit. I don't know why Aristotle put wit in there, but I will tell you this. Most of us realize that a lot of leaders spend a lot of time reading. You always see Bill Gates's, reading list, Oprah's reading list, Michelle Obama's reading list. You see everyone with these reading lists. Why do you think they're reading so much? They're building not only their muscle to learn and to be liberal and to, move about and to change the scope of what they do. They're reading because they're developing the ability to be witty. The people who are witty are quick because they have so much information in their brains. They know so much is going on. They can pull out facts like this because they're constantly reading. They're constantly working that muscle. They're constantly building what they need to do to move forward. And so wittiness is just really a function of your ability and how much knowledge you're able to take in and use. Modesty. I always like leaders that make fun of themselves. One of my greatest mentors was a man that we used to call absent-minded professor. He was just always disheveled. His things were all over the place, and he really loved it. He laughed at himself. He thought this was fun, and he was brilliant. But he did not need other people to build him up as this brilliant leader. He was able to do that because he had enough self-esteem and self-awareness and self-ability to understand, I don't need all of these testimonials. I don't need all these accolades because I believe in moving forward, and that level of modesty is what made him a great leader. Justice. Now, as an attorney, I think this is highly, highly important. And a lot of people think, well, you can play around with justice, but it is, as it should be, the end game. Everything you do as a leader should show that you believe what is just for the people that you serve. And every leader should be a servant. You are serving others. If you are doing something that has nothing to do with justice or serving, then you're really just a leader of yourself and not of others. Now, how do you grow your leadership capacity? We've talked a lot about these 12 virtues, and you may say, well, I have some of these, but I don't have all of these. Look at the ones that you have. the ones you got. I can talk all day, I'm witty, you know, I understand this, my spiritual self is intact. Take those and put them to the side. Don't worry about the ones you have. The ones that you don't have, you need to exercise that muscle. You need to work very hard to make sure that if you don't have these things well, then here's a little trick of the trade. Surround yourself with people that have those characteristics. Everyone knows of a good team. I know people that have built grand companies, and on this basis, one person was sort of the open doors. They could sell it all day. The other person was that more patient person and worked through the details. So all of these things are important if you have them yourself, but certainly surround yourself with people that have the capacity to complement those aspects of leadership that you may not have. At the end of the day, the takeaway is, in order to be that resilient leader, especially in these difficult times, work on yourself. Build that extra muscle. Break yourself down and be honest with no one else if you are honest with yourself. And tell yourself, I'm gonna be that great leader and I'm gonna work at it. And that's our chat for today. I hope that you have a great conference. Things are a little different than you thought they would be, but that's part of leadership. Adapt yourself, take care of yourself, exercise that mind, body, and spirit. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Sharon. I think now more than ever, we all need to be reminded to focus on self-care. I can say that I've never heard Aristotle's 12 virtues with that kind of insight, so I truly appreciate that. And I do think that it's important to remember that success is more than just our money or our titles. It's about our happiness. So thank you for all of that. I want to point out that today's presentations are available on our website at williamsonchamber.com, Women's Leadership Conference 2020. As we get into our next speaker, I know she's got some statistics and numbers, so it may be easier to reference some of those slides separately. Our next speaker is Dean Sarah Gardiel. Dean Gardiel is the winner of the Prometheus Leadership Award, and she's known for her innovative leadership. She's the first female and the current dean of the Massey College of Business at Belmont University. Today, she's going to be talking about negotiating like a woman, getting what you want and deserve. I, for one, have my pad and pen ready to take some notes, so let's get started. Welcome, Sarah.
Ladies, I am so happy to be with you here today, and I'm really excited about following up on Sharon Robertson's presentation about virtues in women's leadership. This particular session will give us an opportunity to lean into a couple of those virtues and talk about how to actually apply them in your professional life. And in particular, I think it's important for us to hone in on courage, which was one of her values, and the other is appropriate ambition. You know, we're at a time in the political life of this country where there's been a lot of controversy about women and ambition and wanting to be president or vice president or those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of chatter in the media about, is it okay for women to be ambitious? And I'm going to say categorically yes, and we're going to talk about why. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a how-to about how to apply that during a negotiation setting. Now, I understand that all of you have this presentation, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the slides than others. And at the end of the day, you're going to have it all back there so you can go reference it and dig in a little bit deeper where you want to. So a lot of content here. We won't cover it all, but we're really going to pause on the things that hang women up during negotiation. So just a couple of statistical slides here. I'm an academic. We have to do this. Unfortunately, this sad pyramid This is data that has been gathered by Catalyst for decades in this country, shows the terrible challenges that women have in advancing in businesses and in corporate America and nonprofit America. And you can see that women enter the workforce in very strong numbers, but at each succeeding layer of that hierarchy and moving up, they fall off, they fall off, they fall off. And, you know, to the point where 3% of the CEOs, 1.3% of board members are women. Sadly, these numbers haven't changed in decades. This isn't an issue where this is where it looks like today and it's going to all get better next year. We've been stuck at this place for a long time. We also know that women's wages don't stay where they need to be relative to men, and we have statistics about an average salary for white men and what those comparable salaries are for that same job for white women, black women, Asian women. And we, again, across the board, women on average are only making about 67 cents to the dollar. And we also know that that even changes around the country. The gap between women and men in terms of salaries is actually smaller on the coast, and it gets bigger as you go internal. So I don't want to talk about solving all of those problems today because there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and it really is complex. And if it was just one thing we needed to do, we would have done it years ago, and then we would have solved this problem. It's persistent because it has to do with public policy, culture, bias. I even believe some biology is involved there. Women still have to have babies. And at a time like COVID that we're in right now, we know that more women are having to step off of the career track because daycare is not available, childcare, schools, those kinds of things. So it's a big, complex ball of issues that is very hard to tease out. What I want to hone in on today is what can we control? What can we as women do to help advance our careers? And it has to do with our ability to negotiate. So research shows us that women are 4 times less likely than men to negotiate for a salary, to negotiate for a promotion, to negotiate for something that they need to move themselves forward in the workplace. Time after time, we see research that shows that men are much more willing to kind of barge into that space and say, this is what I need, and women don't do it. The interesting thing about salary negotiation is that when you talk with people who are recruiting people for jobs, the vast majority of them say, we expect to negotiate during the job and the interview process, and yet we know that only 1/3 of people interviewing for jobs feel comfortable negotiating. So you're actually going into a space where people are prepared to have those conversations, and we aren't stepping up. So let's think about courage, let's think about proper ambition, and how we can turn that into a discussion about how we can advocate for ourselves and get ahead. Why aren't women better negotiators? We find over and over that they need more support and they need more training around this. I think the bottom line is that culturally, women are just not trained. We don't have the experience of asking for what we need. And so we're more likely to say, when someone says this is what the salary is going to be, to say thank you, rather than, can I have more? Is there something we can talk about here? So, you know, a lot of issues behind this, but this is where we really need to screw that courage on, right? And make sure that we are our best advocates, because we know women can advocate. We advocate all the time for other people. We're just not good at applying it to ourselves. Is that right? I mean, how many of you could go to bat for your best friend if they were in a position where they needed an ally or a champion, or your daughter, or someone in your circle that needed that support and advocacy? We could jump in there in a heartbeat, but there's something about having to do it for ourselves that just really brings us up short. Really brings out our lack of confidence, sometimes lack of self-esteem, sometimes just our cultural training. So let's talk about how to use that courage to dial up the kinds of things that we need to do to negotiate and advocate for ourselves. So I have this presentation in 3 parts, and like I said, there's a lot of content in each of those that I'm going to fly through some of them, but I'm going to hit on the things that are most important. I think the first thing that I've just told you is you need to negotiate. The men are negotiating for themselves, and if we don't, if we sit back and just do our work and keep our heads down and hope someone notices, we're going to fall behind because other people out there are ahead of us and they are doing negotiations. And we also know now that we're expected to negotiate. So what I'm going to try to do is give you a toolkit to help you walk through that negotiation process. And I'm going to think about this in 3 parts. What do you need to do before you get in that room? It's the negotiation. Far more is about the preparation that you do before you ever get in that setting where you're asking for what you need. Then we'll talk a little bit about what needs to go on in the negotiation itself, and then finally some follow-up things. All right, off we go. Before the negotiations start, do your homework. You need to dig in and research as much as possible about the organization that you're talking to, what their position is in the marketplace, what your particular job would be in that organization. If you can, what the salary for that job would be. Dig in and find out as much as you can. Some of this is available in newspapers. Some of it's on the internet. There are actually salary sites that you can go to say, I'm looking at a sales job in Nashville, Tennessee, or in Franklin, Tennessee, and it will pop it up and say, on average, this is what these jobs pay. So get in your mind what a ballpark is for this particular job. Use your network, ask people that you know within that organization, get as much data as you can off of secondary sources and then from one-on-one conversations, and go in armed, knowing what this company is about, what their values are, how you can contribute to that. Because that's really the important thing, is that you have to sell why they need you. And you can't have that conversation if you aren't fully aware of what they're trying to do and where they're trying to go. So start with doing your homework. The second one is do a pretty clear-headed self-assessment of your strengths and weaknesses. Now, I've got the scale down there of pros versus cons. And ladies, we all know that if we started with the cons, what are the things that we think we're not prepared for, that we don't do well? What are our weaknesses? We could go to town on that. It's just the way that we're wired. What we need to do is to lean into that pros side. What are we bringing to this organization? What are our chief skills and attributes that they need from us? And what I say is start with self-reflection. What do you think they are? But then cast your net a little bit wider. Talk to your best friends, your colleagues from work, even your mom, and say, what are my best qualities? And sometimes those people can help you articulate your strengths in ways that would not really occur to you. Other people sometimes see you much more clearly in terms of your strengths than you do. So get that information ready to go. And also remember that, you know, other people's perspectives can be helpful. And if you're applying for a job that doesn't need the specific skills of what your previous job was, think more generally in terms of your skills. If you were let's say a salesperson at a previous job, and your job was to go out there and recruit people and sell them a particular product or service, but now you're applying for a job that's more about marketing. What do you talk about? My ability to assess an environment and understand who I'm talking to and what their needs are. My ability to relate and create interactions between my organization and other people out there. Take everything up a notch to a more general plane and talk about how those skills can apply across a lot of different positions. That can be very helpful. So assess the company, assess yourself. Now, here's a tip on how to tell your story. The first is to think about stories. The more you can go from the general I'm good at to a very specific story, the better it is. People remember stories. There's something about our memory that latches onto those. And so rather than throwing out a number, to them if you say, here was a difficult situation that I found myself in, or my organization, and this is what I did. And these were the outcomes. Now you've crafted a narrative, and that narrative is going to stick. Problem, solution. Here's what I did, and here's how it paid off for the organization, or this is how we got a win, or this is how we grew our sales, or whatever those outcomes are. And really focus on your achievements. I think this is important. The more you can talk in terms of what were the wins, what were the victories, specifically what happened in your previous organizations, what were the outcomes of what you did. So think about what's going on here with this slide. We're going from kind of a general assessment of who I am and what I'm good at, and then we're saying, how do you tell that story? Rather than just throwing out, an adjective. I'm a people person. Tell the story. Tell the story of how that worked to your advantage. Tell the story of an outcome related to that. So you're always thinking about moving from the general to the specific in terms of how you present yourself. It's really important to think about these things before you go in. Again, these are hard sometimes to remember on the spot. So instead, get those ideas, those stories, those outcomes clearly in your head so you're walking in ready to tell them. Really important. What are the questions that you have? What do you want to know before you walk out that door? You are walking in that door as an equal partner in the decision. I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes, but you're making a decision about what's best for yourself. They're making a decision about what's best for themselves, and you've got questions about whether they can rise to the occasion and be the kinds of organization that you want to work for instance, or whether that particular position is the one that's going to be best for you in terms of your career progression. You will probably have time to ask 2 or 3 max. So you don't have to have a list of a dozen questions. What are the most critical, important questions that you need answered before you decide whether you want to work with them or not? And practice, practice, practice. Literally get someone, role play, answer questions like why you're interested in that job, in that company. The more you can articulate that crisply and not be kind of searching for words, the better. What is your value proposition for them? What do you bring to them, and how do you tell that, again, in a crisp way? And sometimes there's some obvious weaknesses, a gap in your resume. Maybe you did have to jump off for a while for childcare or elder care, whatever those are. If there's something obvious that's going to come out, you hit it first, right? Don't let them bring those things up. Now, what do you do actually during the negotiation process? I'm gonna go more quickly through this, but let me just say that your attitude walking in the door is key on this. So don't go in with low energy. Don't go in fear or intimidation. What do you need to do to get your groove on and feel good about yourself? Literally, it may be listening to your favorite piece of music that jazzes you up, but pull yourself into a space where you feel strong and where you feel really grounded, whatever it is that's going to take you to that place. And the other is, again, remember, you're going in as an equal. You're not going in asking for crumbs. You're going in saying, I'm valuable. This is what I bring to you. Tell me what you're bringing to me. And that's confidence. That's not arrogance. That is a person who knows themselves. That's a person who's professional. Don't be afraid of that at all. Okay, first impressions are key. I've got a whole list of the things that need to happen around that. You probably know about a lot of these, so I'm going to skip through that. Don't be afraid to listen. Don't be afraid to be quiet. Sometimes even just in a conversation, we can be very uncomfortable with silence. And what you need to do is be okay to stop talking. Don't fill all the space. Listen. Let them step in and tell you or ask you about what they're interested in. An interview should be probably more parts listening for you than talking. If you're talking the entire time and they're not getting to talk to you, that's not a good interview. show interest, show passion. Sometimes, again, that if we are fearful, if we're not confident, sometimes that can shut us down emotionally and kind of pull us back in. People want to hire someone who's enthusiastic and high energy and someone that's excited about them. My favorite interviews have been when the applicant walked in the door and said, I want this job, and let me tell you why, and just dove into that and showed a lot of enthusiasm. Companies want to be wanted, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, but remember to show it. I mean, that's energy, that's smiling, that's kind of, leaning into what you're saying. Don't let any kind of fear or intimidation lock you down, because that's not going to play very well. That's why you get your groove on before you go in. Think broadly always about what you're asking for. Or sometimes we get very locked into a salary number or this particular job title. There are a lot of things that can happen to advance your career. And what I would encourage you to do is think about a broad set of things that you can think about to ask for that would help pull you forward in your career. And it may be about flex time, and it may be about additional professional development that you need. It usually doesn't come down to just any one thing like a salary. So just think broadly through this set of things that I've listed here, and think about what you're asking them for. And that is an opportunity to advance your career. And there are a lot of ways they can help you with that. Don't let your emotions get away from you in a negative way, right? Don't talk about personal and family matters. That unfortunately doesn't play well for women to put that out there first. If they ask you about it, that's great. They've opened the door, you go in it, but you don't want to lead with that. It's sad that we have to think in those terms, but there's a reality around that. Don't bring up salary until the very end, and in fact, let them bring it up in any kind of promotion or even a recruiting process. Don't feel like you need to say yes or no immediately, all right? Always walk out saying, thank you, I'm gonna need some time to think about this, and make sure that you don't feel kind of trapped in a situation where you have to make a decision before you can step back and think through things. Don't be afraid to say no. This is the most important thing. This is you're going in as an equal. If there are things that don't work for you and aren't gonna work for you, be aware that you can say no, this is not right. Thank you for your time. I need to find something that's a better fit for me. After the negotiations, just a couple of things. If you can, get the offer in writing, and especially if you've talked about a lot of things beyond salary. One way to do this is to follow up with an email that says, thank you for the interview. My recollection is that we agreed on these things, and get them to say yes. Sometimes it's just very helpful to write it down and get everyone clear on what you talked about there. Make sure you got all those answers to the questions that you had. And if you didn't, go back and say, I realized that I walked out with a few things that I needed to know about that didn't get answered. Can we talk about those? And always thank them, obviously, and give yourself time. I'm going to need a couple of days, I'm going to need a week, whatever it's going to take. You might have other job interviews going on. Make sure that you're getting what you need on the way out the door and you're not getting pushed. I think the bottom line on all of this is that, we're putting ourselves in situations where we want success on all sides. And if you go into the interview without appropriate ambition and some courage to step up and tell your story, you're going to undermine yourself. And to the extent that you do that, it not only hurts you, but it hurts other women that come behind you. We need to all collectively be able to stand in our space, say, this is what I'm worth, and be able to go in and have what sometimes we feel like are those tough conversations to move ourselves ahead in organizations and be equal to men in this regard. So I hope this is helpful to you. I wish you all well in your ability to ask for what you need. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I was reminded of a sign I saw years ago in a Whole Foods that said, "Feed yourself like you're feeding the people you love." And I thought of that just now, thinking if we could advocate for ourselves the way we advocate for our friends and family, wouldn't that be incredible? So thank you for those wise words. Our final speaker today joins us virtually. Holly Sears Sullivan is no stranger to the area. She began her career in the Nashville region years ago, and she's now the Director of Worldwide Economic Development for Amazon. I got to meet Holly in those early years and then connected with her again as she led the group that was tasked with choosing the Amazon expansion locations. We're happy to have her with us here today, and personally, I'm pretty excited about the idea of one of those little Amazon scouts delivering one of my packages here soon. So welcome, Holly. We're happy to have you.
Good afternoon. I'm Holly Sullivan, and I'm head of Amazon's Worldwide Economic Development team. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, but I'm honored to be included in this important conference. I was asked to discuss resilience and how it relates to my professional and personal growth. I think that's a topic of mind right now for a lot of people. Let me start with the traditional definition of resilience. It means to recover quickly or bounce back, perhaps from a life-altering event to an original form. To me, the definition begs the question, when you make a life-changing decision or go through a transformative event, do we bounce back to our original form? I don't think so, and I'm not sure we want to. To me, resilience isn't about going backward. It's about getting better, smarter, and stronger as we move through moments of challenge and consequence. All of us, no matter our path, face such moments. My own career in economic development began in a mostly rural, yet rapidly growing community outside of Nashville. I was among very few women in the field and one of the youngest leaders of an economic development organization. I say this to paint a picture of a young woman embarking on an exciting career in which most of my colleagues and role models and all of my bosses were men. I didn't see this as an obstacle, and I certainly didn't foresee the many barriers and preconceived notions I'd have to overcome. I laugh when I think about how naive I was sometimes, but resilient I was. When something or someone stood in my way and in the way of important progress, I pushed back, sometimes too hard, sometimes too loudly, and sometimes not loudly enough. But every time I spoke up, I learned something more about the situation I faced, something about the value of a fresh perspective, and often something about myself. I never did bounce back to my original form. I took the knowledge I gained and I moved forward, stronger and smarter than how I started out. I stayed in the public sector for more than 15 years in 3 different communities, including the Washington, D.C. region. In 2016, I left the public sector for a new job and a new challenge at Amazon. Amazon is a company that embraces change and encourages people with big ideas. It's my kind of place. I lead a team that engages with communities across the globe to discuss investment and jobs. A ton of work goes into how we make decisions about where and how Amazon will evolve. And I'm not sharing the secret sauce with you today, but I do want to share a bit with you about our culture of innovation, our culture of thinking big, and our culture of challenging yourself, holding yourself accountable, and at times being vocally self-critical. When we think of innovation, we often think of cool devices like Alexa, which is really cool, but innovation can also be a way of thinking or approaching an issue or a strategy differently. Take job creation, for example. At Amazon, we work to build relationships with communities where we invest. In Tennessee, we employ more than 12,000 people across the state. We create thousands of jobs annually, and we also create thousands of lasting relationships. Why is that important? I go back to the word resilient. Job creation and innovation ensure communities can be resilient, and our relationships make each of us resilient to the possibility of change. We like to think big at Amazon. Good leaders think big too, and I consider myself very fortunate to work in a company where you can share ideas, collect data and information to support those big ideas, and implement big ideas. A recent example is our Amazon Nashville office. The process of identifying a location for our second headquarters, what we call HQ2, was an amazing experience, an opportunity for us to think big and think differently. During the HQ2 search, the Nashville region was particularly attractive because it's known for having good talent and it's generally a really cool place to be. We made a decision based upon data and also instinct that we can hire tech talent in this region. And we have been successful in doing so since we opened the corporate office in 2019. The culture of the region and the culture of Amazon are similar. There's a common spirit of creativity and innovation and willingness to think big. I'll never forget the night. It was a few months after we made the announcement about our corporate office that we hosted students in the region at the Ryman Auditorium. To me, it was a collision of creativity and innovation in the house that makes dreams come true. As always, I was proud to be a native Nashvilleian and excited that Amazon would be tapping into all that Middle Tennessee has to offer. Of course, getting to that moment was not easy, but it was worth every moment I challenged myself, held myself to an increasingly higher standard, and at times been vocally self-critical. Now, this can be tricky, but I believe that being honest with yourself and being willing to critique yourself in a way that drives improvement is an important step in learning and becoming more successful in whatever path you choose. And I'm not talking about beating yourself up. I'm talking about being willing to look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth about whether you're truly opening your mind to all possible solutions, asking tough questions, pushing back when necessary, and giving 100%. Being vocally self-critical is a leadership principle at Amazon and among my favorites. Ensuring that we are asking difficult questions and embracing both the positive and the negative only makes us smarter and more informed. It also builds resilience and it helps you move forward. As a woman leader, I believe in the culture of inclusion, and I work for a company that embraces that culture. When you invite someone to share different views, different backgrounds, different ideas, you produce innovative, big ideas. You become more resilient, and you also realize how someone from a different background can inspire and empower you to be a better version of yourself. Let me go back to what I asked at the beginning. When you make a life-changing decision or experience that transformative event, do we bounce back to our original form? When I think about resilience, I think about being a female leader who's able to successfully move forward and help others do the same. I think about being resilient, but I also think about taking that knowledge, taking what I learned to think big and move forward. I think it's really important to take what you learn to make more informative decisions. But most importantly, it's really important to be yourself. Thank you so much for your time today and enjoy the rest of your day.
Holly, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate that. And don't be a stranger to Williamson County as soon as it's safe to travel again. We're looking forward to seeing you soon. Now we're going to break things up a little bit. We're going to divide you out into rooms. So go ahead and get ready to turn your video on. You'll be turning your microphones on later. And at this time, I want to take just a couple minutes to thank our sponsors. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Vanderbilt Health, and then our supporting sponsors, AP Live, Crew Nashville, Franklin Synergy Bank, and Tractor Supply Company. The sponsor support in partnership with our Women in Business Steering Committee is what makes this event possible. Now, you're going to get to meet the women in the business committee as they help lead the breakout rooms. Today's program was seamless, and it was put together and recorded here at the AP Live studio. So please reach out to them for any of your virtual events and needs, including the Field at Franklin, which is a new LED screen drive-in, so programs and events can be hosted any time of day. This time, we've got a few words from our sponsor, AP Live, while we break you out into breakout rooms.
There will always be a need for in-person meetings and gatherings, but sometimes that's not possible.
We still need to work together as teams. We just need to do it in a new way, and we can help facilitate those conversations just all online.
We're able to offer some virtual solutions that are going to allow for that business to still take place and for those important conversations to still happen. Whether it's online polling, whether it's a digital touchscreen, whether it's a fireside chat or a panel, whatever is best going to communicate your message virtually, we can make that happen.
AP Live has been doing virtual meetings for a very long time now. We've been doing them all over the world, and that expertise And that experience is what will allow us to help you communicate your message and be collaborative as we move forward in the digital world.
Hi, Ruth. How are you? I don't think she can hear me.